Continue, Mr. Micetic. There still seems to be a problem about the operative indictment. The indictment that was filed on the 22nd of February had as its title, and that was a remainder from the past, proposed amended indictment. So we ordered the prosecution, or invited the prosecution, to refile it, but now without the word proposed, because it was the operative indictment. To my understanding, this has not been done yet, which creates confusion as to what the operative indictment is.
Yes, Your Honor, and that I had hoped it would have been completed before there was some problem with the presence of the prosecutor to sign it and make it official, but it's definitely on our radar screen and the operative documents have been prepared.
Yes. Then the Chamber expects the prosecution to deal with that without further delay. At the same time, I now put it on the record that since the only thing the Chamber expects that will change is to take out the word proposed, that the content of the indictment as filed on the 22nd of February is the operative indictment. Mr. Micetic, you may proceed.
I do want to correct the record. Mr. Tiger alerted me to the fact that, in fact, the Steiner Hirdness Unmung report is a 92-tur exhibit with one of their witnesses, so I did want that to clarify.
Yes, you mean we don't have to wait?
Correct.
Yes, that's...
Just
okay.
to correct the record, Your Honor. And I regret the error.
Let's proceed.
Mr. President, Your Honors, why did the Krajina Serbs leave on the 4th of August? Because the leadership of the Krajina Serbs had a plan to evacuate its civilians. They trained and had exercises to be ready to implement that plan. And on the 4th of August, they implemented it. On the 4th of August, let me take a step back. You will hear evidence, Your Honors, that from UN personnel, they had reported at 1500 on the 4th of August that the situation in Knin was now calm, that people were exiting their homes after the initial shelling in the morning and were cleaning up the broken glass at 1500 on the 4th. At 1645, Milan Martic, and it's on your screens, issues the evacuation order to evacuate the civilian population. Point 1 states to begin the planned evacuation of all inhabitants unfit for combat from the following municipalities, and lists them. Point 2 says to evacuate them, the evacuation shall be carried out in a planned manner according to the existing planned directions toward Knin and then through Otrich towards Srb and Lapac. The prosecution yesterday suggested to the trial chamber that this order was not intended to evacuate the civilians permanently out of the so-called Krajina, but that the plans were only to evacuate them internally to Srb and Lapac, which are towns in Croatia. We submit to you, Your Honors, that that is not an interpretation supported by the evidence. It is true that Martic's order says to go to Srb and Lapac, but that is because the existing plans that had already been prepared said that. In reality, the order that was issued said to go to Bosanski Petrovac in Bosnia and to Banja Luka in Bosnia. How do we know this? At 1953, on the evening of the 4th, the UN reported the following at paragraph 4 of this document. We have been advised by the Civil Affairs Office in Sector South that the Knin leadership have requested UNHCR and UNPF assistance in evacuating approximately 32,000 civilians from Benkovac, Obrovac, Gračac, and Knin to Petrovac and Banja Luka in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have more than this. We have the Krajina Serb leaders themselves on video for you to see, describing the atmosphere around Milan Martic and General Mrkšić on the afternoon of the 4th, and how it was that the decision to evacuate the entire civilian population from so-called Krajina to Bosnia was taken. And we'd like to play that video for you now. The speaker is the mayor of Knin, Drago Kovačević, who was a high-ranking member of Martić's inner circle at the time and who was present when these conversations and the decision was taken to evacuate the civilian population.
And Martic was in uniform. There was a huge ashtray in front of him, several empty packs of cigarettes. And we exchanged greetings. Why had he called me? He said he'd called me because he said, I've decided to evacuate the city, and we should take steps to relocate the civilian population, and I must stress this, civilian population from northern Dalmatia, meaning the municipalities of Benkovac, Obrovac, Knin, Drniš, and the municipality of Gračac in Lika. This did not come as a shock to me. I perceived this to be some sort of a rational measure. At that moment, we passed the order. Kosta Novakovic specifically passed the order. It was then that we wrote in the order that this was to evacuate the civilian population, meaning in the direction of Knin, Otrić, Serb, or Lapac, which were the areas where the people were to be relocated to. It was then that Mrkšić reacted and said, what do you mean by Serb? We need to go further than Serb, he says, further towards Petrovac and Banja Luka. And then he expressed a reservation. He said if the civilians started leaving, the military lines would be facing a problem. He says, if the civilians go, the army will go after them to evacuate them. And we are going to have enormous problems. However, sometime that evening, when he arrived, Mrkšić was somewhere on the floor above. He told me on the stairs that the evacuation of the population had been ordered. I told him, General, the army will fall apart. What do you mean by evacuating the people? And doing this by means of an order. He said, this is not in our hands. It was the Supreme Defense Council that took that decision. And then someone requested that Martic, it was Martic himself who requested to be put through to Slobo, to speak to Slobo. And he spoke not to Slobo, but to Brane Crnčević. So, he got hold of Brane Crnčević, who assured him that he probably couldn't get hold of Slobo, which was why he spoke to Brane, and then he was told by him, no, he won't take any steps. Slobo wouldn't do anything in this case. And then for the first time, I heard Martic cursing Slobo, and so on and so forth.
Your Honor, Your Honors, the evidence in this case is going to be overwhelmingly clear that the Krajina Serb leadership under Milan Martic, as they had in Western Slavonia, as they had prepared to do for the 90 days prior to Operation Storm, evacuated their own population rather than allow them to live in a multi-ethnic state. It was part and parcel of the ideology that reigned in the so-called Krajina. As referenced in the prosecution's pretrial brief in Martic, the ideology was there can be no coexistence with Croats. Serbs can only feel safe in a homogeneous, ethnically Serb state. That was the mentality that had been imposed by the Greater Serbian ideology of the time. We know this from a video from the 7th of August, discussing now, in retrospect, what had just occurred. This is real evidence taken in real time on the 7th of August, 1995. It involves a man named Savo Štrbac. This is a name you will hear repeatedly and extensively throughout this trial. Mr. Štrbac is a key member of Mardic's joint criminal enterprise, who was among the leadership of the Krajina Serbs, who was ideologically committed to the ideology of an ethnically pure Greater Serbia. He made these statements to the international media repeatedly in the years prior to Operation Storm. He repeatedly stated that Serbs will only accept a unified Greater Serbia and that no coexistence with Croats was possible. After Operation Storm, Mr. Štrbac formed his own, quote, humanitarian center and became an associate of the Office of the Prosecutor in assisting the prosecutor's office in obtaining witnesses for this case. Mr. Štrbac even received a letter of recommendation from the prosecution to assist him in raising money for his efforts. The following video was taken on the 7th of August 1995. It is Mr. Štrbac explaining from a TV studio in Banja Luka to the Serb population why the decision had been taken to take the civilians out of the so-called Krajina. In this video, you will see the very mindset of which I speak, the mindset of the ideology of an ethnically pure Greater Serbia.
The Croats never intended to live with the Serbs in the former Croatia. This was now most clearly demonstrated by the latest examples of their aggression in western Slavonia, now in Dalmatia, Lika, Banja and Kordun. All of us who were in a position to speak to international players constantly kept warning them about this fact and spoke about this, that the Croats didn't want to live with us and that we cannot allow ourselves to live with them, so that the genocide committed against us in the past would not be repeated. And I use the term we must not allow ourselves because it has a stronger meaning than we do not wish to live with them, simply. We do not and cannot, of course, live with them, and because of this it was necessary first and foremost that we preserve our biological potential. Our people could have become extinct, the civilian population could have been killed, our civilians and women could have been killed. We need our biological potential for something that is hopefully yet to come. On the day of the most recent aggression against Krajina, my association, the Veritas, wrote a letter to Boutros Ghali alerting him about these things, a never-before-seen massacre which would be launched against the Serb population, which is why it was decided in the end to begin the exodus in order to protect the people.
Your Honor, the decision was taken to preserve our biological potential. That is the ideology at play here on the Krajina Serb side. That is the reason that leaders of the Krajina Serbs, and indeed leaders of the Milošević JCE from Western Slavonia to Sarajevo to Kosovo, evacuate their civilians to preserve their biological potential. I turn next to the issue of crime prevention. You've already seen the orders of General Gotovina in the attack order for Operation Storm concerning the implementation of international humanitarian law and the prevention of looting. You've seen the split military district diary entry saying Knin must not suffer the same fate as Grahovo. We now have for you the entry in the operational diary on the morning of the 5th of August as General Gotovina's forces, as he is advised that his forces are about to enter Knin, General Gotovina issues the order orally, quote, he ordered maximum fairness in treatment of civilians and behavior towards the UN. This order has been passed to all operative groups and commanders. General Gotovina, in the execution of the operation, is issuing orders for maximum correctness to civilians in the UN. Nevertheless, it is true that when the troops entered Knin, In their state of jubilation, they began to engage in looting, not of any great scale, and that will be confirmed for you by the United Nations itself, sit reps of the United Nations, as well as a video that we will show you a trial of the UN on the 7th saying Croatian troops in Knin are behaving, quote, professionally and correctly. Why, on the 7th, are they behaving professionally and correctly? The prosecution referenced a video of what General Gotovina did when he entered Knin on the 6th. It is important for you to keep in mind that General Gotovina conducted Operation Storm from his headquarters in Bosnia. It is important to keep in mind, and this is what Mr. Kehoe was referring to in his portion, that the objectives of the Croatian army were centered in Bosnia, and Operation Storm for General Gotovina was simply a left turn to take one portion of territory and then to come back to his headquarters in Bosnia and be prepared for further operations in Bosnia, where he had been since the winter of 1994. Again, I repeat that General Gotovina was in Bosnia from the winter of '94. General Gotovina came into Knin on the morning of the 6th after having issued written orders, after having issued oral orders, seeing troops breaking glass, drinking, and otherwise in a state of exhalation, and videotaped a meeting with his commanders, all of whom thought that General Gotovina was about to praise them for winning the war and taking the capital of the Krajina Serbs. And this is General Gotovina in real time on the 6th. It is my suggestion, but obviously it's up to the trial chamber. I think it's important that the trial chamber hears General Gotovina's voice during this. It's a 6-minute video, but obviously I'll leave it to the trial chamber. I've been told by the booths that if it's changed to BCS, you can read along on the subtitles. If you prefer the translations, we'll have to replay it again.
I think the chamber has the choice to hear the
Yes.
original on Channel 6.
Okay.
If you could assist us in telling approximately when we should move to what's approximately the language that immediately precedes
I will
the moment.
stop it and then tell you to
Okay,
change
and
it.
then we'll move to 6, and then we'll read the English, and then we'll hear what you'd like us to hear. Then please proceed.
Sa svim zapovjednicima koji su vodili postrojbe u južnom sektoru. Ali ono ostalo što je bila zadaće su bile izdane sinoć.
And all the rest that was tasked, the tasks that were issued last night, I'm now calling upon you to account for yourself. Security Services, Generalic, did he pass it on to Loza? First, did the Political Affairs Department do its job? No, it didn't. Cheko, you were at the meeting, weren't you? Zelic was here. He had other tasks. You were at the meeting. What have you done since last night? Was the county prefect contacted? Did you verify whether the county prefect was contacted? Was civilian protection requested? Were the firefighters requested? They have been requested, General. Where are they then? Do you realize that everything has to be ready by 5 o'clock this afternoon? Everything. Was it that difficult to find just a single cross here? A single cross? Škorić. Where's the cross? We couldn't find one, it should be clear. You didn't find a cross, you fucking imbecile. Had you stopped in scene by that church there and asked the friar there to give you a cross, he'd have given you 10 of those, because you are idiots, incompetent. But you're good enough to pose in front of those cameras, those screens, to be photographed. You're good enough to do that. Just one example, you weren't even able to get hold of a single cross.
A da ne govorim ono što se vidi u gradu.
Let me not even begin to mention what I could see in the town. It's a disgrace. Barbarians and vandals act like that. Those who are paid with war booty and wage war for war booty. The unit commanders from Sinj to Knin. with the help of the engineers, have the task today to get the entire road in order. Everything, the vehicles, all that dirt, throw it out, clean it up, clear it. The army is not to be seen in the streets. The military police is not in groups, but is deployed at all checkpoints. They took a map of the town as planned and systematically set up checkpoints and is in control of the town. The military police commanders are patrolling. Patrol vehicles are patrolling the town. Cooperation with the civilian authorities in the form of the civilian police is to be established until General Chermak, who has just arrived this morning, can take over these matters and take matters into his own hands. And until then, if he's left alone, by 5 o'clock tonight nothing will be ready, but we'll have chaos again. What a disgrace. Do you realize the Prime Minister is coming, the ministers, the Minister of Transportation and all that? Anybody arriving today will enter into a town that the Croatian army went through and which it still had under its control because the civilian authorities haven't taken over yet. Who are you trying to embarrass? Are you embarrassing yourselves and those under your command for whom you are responsible? And all of our people who died, who were killed, you are responsible. People who gave their lives for this. You should have a little respect, because people have died for the sake of Knin and all the way from Dinara since this winter last October, not to mention the recent operations and how many perished and how many are still in hospital to this very day, and those maimed for life. And yet you behave like this and you call yourselves commanders. Security, what is security? Security must be organized. It's in control of the situation. The military police must obey. They are the executors, the technical executors. They are the guardians of the code of honor of the armed forces. It guarantees the implementation and application of all of that in the field. Political Affairs Department. I don't see any posters in the streets, no flags at any of the major facilities, installations, nothing. Where is all of that? Where is all of that? It's being put up as we speak, General. What's being put up? Where is it? It's 11:30. Since this morning, since 4 o'clock in fact. You should have been doing this all through the night. A helicopter is available. Everything is available to pursue this with total efficiency. And yet, you don't know how to make use of all of this. If you don't know how to work, do your job, something, whatever. Since nobody dragged you by your hair to become what you are, then gentlemen, go ahead and join the infantry, go into battle. You'll end up saying, well, I am a warrior. The fuck you are. Every day is a new day for a warrior, and every day a warrior has to prove himself over and over again.
Your Honor, the prosecution described those orders from General Gotovina yesterday as boilerplate and routine. I suggest to you, Your Honors, that if one of us were yelled at by our superiors like that, we would not consider that to be boilerplate or routine. What happened on the 6th of August? It is a critical day. The prosecution presented a map yesterday, which I believe is misleading to the trial chamber, in that it suggests it was a map of General Gotovina's forces and the days that where they were stationed as Operation Storm progressed. And the overlay, and this is the map, the overlay then is, actually shrink it up a little bit, please. These are General Gotovina's forces advancing in the period of 4 August through the 8th or 9th of August, but the killings, wanton destruction, plunder are for the period through the 30th of September, 1995. We believe that's misleading to the trial chamber, Your Honors, because on the 6th of August, the civilian government of the Republic of Croatia, consistent with the plans that had been drawn up and ordered by Ministers Šušak and Jarnjak, took control of territories as the Croatian army was advancing in the front line. What that means as a matter of law is that these territories immediately returned to the constitutional order of the Republic of Croatia, and the civilian government had jurisdiction over these lands. I'd like to show you now a video of the 6th of August, of the Minister of the Interior establishing the police station in Knin and appointing an ethnic Serb as the head of the Croatian police administration in Knin.
Dear Mr. Chief, please allow me to hand over to you the signboard bearing the inscription Republic of Croatia, Ministry of the Interior, Police Administration, Knin. It is provided by the constitutional law on ethnic minorities of the Republic of Croatia that Knin has a district, and accordingly the police administration should now be established in Knin. Since, according to the aforementioned law, an assembly has not yet been established, and upon this assembly's proposal the chief shall be appointed by the government of the Republic of Croatia, I hereby appoint you acting chief until an election takes place, whereupon the assembly will nominate to the government of the Republic of Croatia a chief. Until such time, I am assigning you this duty provided by the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia and the laws of the Republic of Croatia. Your task shall be to establish the civilian authorities in Knin and in the area of your police administration in your own area of responsibility. You are to link up with the police administration of Zadar. Congratulations to you.
On the 6th of August, General Gotovina turned over control of the town of Knin to the civilian government, and General Gotovina left to continue offensive operations in Operation Storm to the north of Knin. It is important to note that as the Croatian army took territory, it immediately turned over jurisdiction of that territory to the civilian government. I think the best way for the trial chamber to hear this is to hear it from the Minister of the Interior himself, who held a press conference on the 8th of August and went and explained in great detail the constitutional order of the Republic of Croatia, what the security plans were, and who had jurisdiction over the territory referenced in the map the prosecution submitted yesterday. This is Minister of the Interior Jarnjak on the 8th of August.
Good evening. This conference is now open. I would like to welcome the Minister of the Interior of the Republic of Croatia, Mr. Ivan Jarnjak. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Please allow me to inform you about the current and the future activities of the Ministry of the Interior throughout the areas that are now being liberated. The constitutional and legal order of the Republic of Croatia is now being introduced to the liberated areas. In order to accomplish this, it is necessary for the Ministry of the Interior, along with other institutions, to enter those areas with its forces. Following the Croatian Army and the special units of the Ministry of the Interior, the civilian police entered those areas as well immediately after them, establishing basic police and border police stations. Following state policy guidelines, already in 1992, the Ministry of the Interior developed the organizational structure of two of these police administration and police stations for the entire Republic of Croatia, including the territories that have now been liberated. Therefore, we've had the entire organizational structure in place since 1992. Now we are merely implementing it. Of all the police stations that had been expelled from their respective areas during the aggression, those police stations that had been expelled in 1991 and 1992, in part, they continued operating in such areas as they have been relocated to. Now they return to their own original areas, those being the police stations Lovinac, Drniš, Velika Kijevo, Slunj, Petrinja, Glina and Hrvatska Kostajnica. The expelled police substations have also been returned, those being Cetingrad, Saborsko, Plaški and Lasinje. The border police have become operational in Hrvatska Kostenica, Kijevo, Slunj, Donji Lapac, Strmica, Donji Srb, and Ličko-Petrovo Selo. Police stations are prepared to receive the border police in Dvor and Topusko. According to the constitutional law on human rights and liberties, the rights of ethnic communities and minorities, police administrations, which must be organized according to these laws, have become operational, those being the Knin Police Administration and the Glina Police Administration. Those are districts, according to this constitutional law, which have special statutes. In those areas, of course, police stations have also been established. For Knin, Donji Lapac, Gračac, Korenica, Benkovac and Obrovac. Those are the police administrations which are part of, or rather police stations which are part of this police administration. For the district of Glina, the police administration has been established with the police stations Glina, Vojnić and Hrvatska Kostenica. The police stations of Vrginmost and Dvor are ready to go back to their areas of operation. Immediately after the Croatian Army and the Special Police of the Ministry of the Interior completed the first part of their task and the combat operations and activities ceased, members of the Ministry of the Interior entered the populated localities and started securing the populated localities and the communications connecting those localities and controlling and directing the traffic. At the same time as police stations and police substations were being established, all services of the Ministry of the Interior became operational, meaning civil protection, the firefighters, while preconditions are also being created for the establishment of services that conduct civil affairs, that is, specifically issuing Croatian documents. The civil protection units have started clearing the field in terms of removing small livestock and cattle, taking care of the abandoned movable property and any real estate left behind. First in the settled areas, and over the following days this will also be the case in non-populated areas, probably over the next couple of days. To all those residing in the newly liberated areas, to those who remained and to those who will return, hereby I mean displaced persons, we guarantee personal safety, safety for their property. We guarantee public law and order that we shall uphold. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Jarnjak.
Your Honors, there was one more question, and I believe it was raised in the prosecutor's opening statement regarding this allegation that, yes, the Ministry of the Interior and the constitutional order of the Republic of Croatia had been restored, but somehow the argument was advanced that everybody knew that they really couldn't do their jobs, or they weren't prepared, or they weren't ready. And then the issue was raised about jurisdiction over investigations of crimes committed by soldiers. This question was asked by a reporter of the Washington Post. It concerns an incident of the Bosnian army crossing from the Bihać pocket into Croatia and allegedly burning down Serb villages, and the following question and answer were posed.
Mr. Minister, Ministre,
Washington Post, Jean Rupert. Kakove informacije ima vaša vlada o izvještajima o paljenju sela od strane bosanske vojske koja je ušla na hrvatski teritorij kao podrška hrvatskoj vojnoj operaciji?
Nemam informacije.
I have no information concerning this matter. However, when we come to that area, and any area, the police will establish the actual state of affair, carry on-site investigations at each facility, take records, and then establish whether it was caused by combat activities or something else. Then I will be able to give a specific answer to your question.
Furthermore, Your Honors, on the 8th of August, it's important to note that the justice system had been restored to the newly liberated areas. Courts had been put in place, civilian courts, in Knin on the 8th of August. And we have video of the President of the Supreme Court of Croatia and the Minister of Justice, Mr. Šeparović, in Knin on the 8th of August, establishing the civilian court system.
Danas su u Kninu boravili predsjednik Vrhovnog suda Republike.
The President of the Supreme Court of the Republic of Croatia, Krunoslav Lolić, and the Minister of Justice, Miroslav Šeparović, visited Knin today. At the building of the Municipal Court, a work meeting was held with the presidents of the county courts in Šibenik, Split, and Zadar. It has been concluded that the Municipal Court in Knin, headed by Milovan Čurko, should become operational as soon as possible. The Minister of Justice, that is the competent county court, made a decision according to which the seat, that is the temporary seat of the Municipal Court in Knin, is relocated from Šibenik to Knin. Today we opened the building in Knin, and the fact that from this day the building of the Municipal Court in Knin is for practical purposes open means that the legal state of Croatia has become functional in those areas, and that the implementation of the rule of law as one of the fundamental principles of the Croatian constitutional order has begun. I'm confident that this is a new beginning, a beginning where the Municipal Court in Knin will guarantee all human rights to all citizens who live here and contribute to the rule of the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Croatia. The high-level delegation continued its visit to the area in Drniš.
Please proceed.
Now, again, I wish to reiterate the point why we went through that exercise, is because the constitutional order of the Republic of Croatia and civilian institutions were back in the territory. This map would therefore lead you to believe, because the crimes committed after storm through the 30th of September are overlaid on a map of General Gotovina's conduct of battle for 4 days in early August, it would lead you to think that the Croatian army held this territory through the 30th of September or was otherwise responsible for security, and that is not the case. The fact of the matter is, Croatian troops were not in control of this territory after hostilities ended on the 9th of August. General Gotovina continued to nevertheless issue orders for compliance with discipline. He issued the following order on the 10th of August. Based on the information from the areas liberated by the HV, the analysis thereof, and in order to prevent theft of property, undisciplined conduct, and to save human lives, I hereby prohibit arbitrary movement of the HV members in the liberated areas without the knowledge of their...
Kindly slow down for the interpreters, thank you.
Sorry. I'll go to point 2. Take all necessary measures and fully engage in the implementation of the military disciplinary conduct and the maintenance of order in the areas of responsibility and prevent arson and all other illegal acts. Take resolute measures against anybody who conducts himself in an undisciplined manner. When we talk about murders, the state of the evidence in this case is that there is not a single piece of evidence that would suggest that General Gotovina ever had any information about anybody being unlawfully killed. The prosecution yesterday talked about subordination of General Gotovina's sanitation units, and then reports were sent to somebody else, but I didn't hear in that argument that a report was ever sent to General Gotovina informing him of anything improper in terms of unlawful killing. There would have been no reason for anyone to inform General Gotovina about this. That's why there are no reports. There is no reason because the civilian government was in charge of the area. The civilian police had primary jurisdiction to investigate any murder committed by anyone, to document it, to get the civilian prosecutors on board, and to investigate it. There was no reason for anyone ever to let General Gotovina know of any unlawful killing, and it never happened. I again refer to Occam's principle. You will see in the evidence in this case, Your Honors, that despite the fact that there indeed were problems in coordination and implementation of the plans to provide security in the area, within the Croatian government itself, nobody ever sent a message to General Gotovina that he had to take some measures. Nobody asked him to come to a meeting to say, we can't do our jobs, you need to do something. The international agencies and organizations in the region also did not seek meetings with General Gotovina to advise him of crimes being committed, because he was not a person who was responsible for security in the area. We will show you a videotape at trial of a meeting between General Gotovina and General Ferrand of Canada on the 8th of August, and in that video you will see that there was nothing but praise for General Gotovina, his conduct of hostilities, and the fact that when he turned the town of Knin over, he had restored order when he turned over the town to the civilian government. While we do not dispute that certain incidents did indeed occur of murder, the fact is that there are other incidents that will be contested in this case. There are situations, as the trial chamber is aware, where a cause of death has not been determined, where a body has not been found. Indeed, even to this day, there are multiple names on the prosecution schedule of killings that turn out to be one and the same person. So we will go through that evidence in trial, Your Honors. We do ask you to keep in mind that the prosecution must obviously prove that someone was a non-combatant. The evidence in this trial will show, again according to the Krajina Serb generals themselves, that the average age of the Krajina Serb soldier was 47 years old. Several companies of the RSK had an average age of 56 years old. If that is the average, it is likely that there were people in their 60s who were active combatants. We therefore ask the trial chamber to keep this in mind and keep the prosecution to its proof that a particular person was a non-combatant. It is important to note at this point, again, why that introduction was important about the context of what's going on. General Gotovina was in Bosnia for a year, only had a slight detour to come back to Croatia to conduct Operation Storm. He had been fighting active combat from the 23rd of July in what was known as Operation Summer 95, all the way through the 10th of August in active combat, as were his frontline troops. On orders of his superiors, he was given leave on the 11th of August. He had recently gotten married and left and spent 5 days on islands off the coast of Croatia. This is relevant piece of evidence for us because ultimately you will have to conclude what were General Gotovina's responsibilities as told to him by his superiors. We submit to you, Your Honors, General Gotovina was an operational commander who had been tasked by his superiors to conduct offensive operations and to keep himself focused on being prepared for the next phase of hostilities, which would soon happen. Indeed, they happened so soon that while General Gotovina was on leave, on the 13th and 14th of August, General Mladic executed a counteroffensive against General Gotovina's forces in Bosnia, killing 28 members of the Croatian army. General Gotovina cut short his leave in order to retake command as a result of that counteroffensive. General Gotovina was preoccupied with events in Bosnia. That was the task that was given to him by his military commanders. And the area in his rear, which was now liberated territory in the constitutional order of the Republic of Croatia, had been left intentionally to other agencies of the Croatian government to act in accordance with the law and in accordance with their obligations under the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia. We submit to the trial chamber that if anyone had perceived at the head of the state of Croatia that General Gotovina was responsible for security, he would not have been given leave of 5 days to just rest. Instead, that leave was intended for him and his frontline forces. I would also add that his frontline forces were given leave at the same time, having been in active combat for 17 days. They were on leave. And indeed, when General Gotovina came back on the 16th, the next day he was asked to come to Zagreb because a high-level U.S. delegation led by Mr. Holbrooke and General Wesley Clark were in Zagreb to discuss future Croatian activities in Bosnia. And General Gotovina was in Zagreb preparing the next phase of the hostilities, which were to defeat General Mladic on the battlefield. As you heard earlier, President Clinton had been convinced that only by defeating Mladic's forces could there be a negotiation that would ultimately lead to the Dayton Peace Agreement. General Gotovina was not perceived by anyone in the Croatian government or anyone in the international forces or organizations on the ground as being the person to go to resolve security issues. Everyone understood, including the UNCRO commanders in Knin, that General Gotovina was in Bosnia and was tasked with different objectives. General Gotovina, Your Honors, was not Superman. He was and is a human being who can only do so much. He was entitled, as stated in the von Lieb case, to rely on those other institutions, to rely on commanders in his rear, to rely on the civilian government of the Republic of Croatia to take care of the security situation. He did his job. He fulfilled the objectives that had been laid out for him, which was win the war. He did it all the time by issuing orders, energetically advising his troops of their obligations, instituting training programs, inviting Catholic bishops, constantly trying to take this new army, which didn't exist in 1991, and give it a professional level. I submit to you, Your Honors, that in the 3 years that General Gotovina had a chance to do what he could, he did his job nobly. And I dare say that I do not know of other commanders who would have done a better job. There were indeed problems in restoring law and order to this region. we concede that point. The issue is, what was the intent? The fundamental problem in this case, from our perspective, is that the prosecution starts from the position, as will some of the prosecution's witnesses, that crime happened, and because crime happened, and crime happened on a wide-scale level, the trial chamber is to assume or to draw the conclusion that this was, quote, ordered from the top. Mr. Teager repeated several times yesterday, this is criminal, why can't something be done? What Mr. Teager avoided discussing yesterday was any concrete proposal from the prosecution, from any prosecution witness, so what it is they think could have been done to materially change the situation as it existed when Croatia took 10,500 square kilometers of territory and tried to impose the rule of law in a relatively short period of time. There is a reason why the prosecution and its witnesses avoid that discussion, because the answer is not easy. The question must be asked. If it weren't Croatian forces or the Croatian government or the Croatian police, if this area had been taken over by the best fighting force in the world committed to international humanitarian law, NATO, if the civilian authority had been given to the defender of human rights in the world, the United Nations, would they have taken steps that would have simply solved the problem in a snap, as implied by the prosecution? We don't have to guess on the answer to that question. We will repeatedly ask the prosecution's witnesses to speak concretely about what steps were so obvious that could have been taken that weren't, that the failure to take those steps would amount to recklessness or willful indifference to the crime being committed in this area. We will ask witnesses to compare the situation, particularly the international witnesses, who were also later involved in events in Kosovo in 1999. We want to discuss the situation there because we believe it is important for the trial chamber to have some frame of reference when we review these facts. How did NATO and the UN fare when they had the legal obligations in Kosovo after June of 1999 to protect civilians, protect their property, and maintain the rule of law and law and order? You will find the statistics show that, similar to what happened in Croatia, the same problems were encountered by NATO and the UN in Kosovo. In the 6 months after the international community took control of Kosovo, according to Human Rights Watch, 1,000 Serbian civilians were killed, tens of thousands of Serbian homes were destroyed, uncountable property was looted, 76 Orthodox churches were destroyed or partially destroyed. The question must be raised: if it is so simple to restore order to 10,500 square kilometers of territory, and I note that both Kosovo and the so-called Krajina region are roughly 10,500 square kilometers of territory. If it is so simple, why couldn't NATO and the UN do it? I concede that the parallels obviously will not be perfect, but nevertheless, we need to examine in this case what were the real security possibilities, what were the resources of the Croatian civilian government, the Croatian Ministry of the Interior, the Croatian Army, to restore this order. The prosecutor yesterday openly stated that this was a situation where, according to the statistics we cited to you at the beginning of this opening statement, 44,000 Croats lived in this area in 1991. By 1995, there were less than 500. That means 43,500 people and their families came back to an area that had been devastated. NATO and the UN, in explaining why they could not keep control of Kosovo, said the same thing. We cannot keep control of the situation where people return to their homes and decide to take the law into their own hands or to seek vengeance. The evidence will show, on the basis of the correspondence that you will be given in this case, that the Croatian authorities, military police, civilian police, and others, did not simply sit on their hands and do nothing as this situation continued. There is constant correspondence between Croatian institutions throughout this time period. Meetings are held because the intent was to ensure that the plans and orders that had been issued immediately prior to Operation Storm be implemented and be effective. The fact that the Croatian authorities were not fully effective does not mean that they had criminal intent. We ask the trial chamber to keep that fact in mind. We ask the trial chamber to note the comparisons that we will make and the questions we will ask of the international witnesses in this case, and ask specifically what steps, again, were so obvious that the failure to take them amounts to recklessness or willful indifference by the Croatian government. Nevertheless, documents from this time period from both the Ministry of the Interior and the military police show that measures were being taken. I'm not here to say that all measures were effective or that all crime was prosecuted. Nevertheless, these are the statistics from the 16th of September, 95, of the military police. According to General Laušić, Madam Registrar, if you would show the document. General Laušić filed a report on the 16th of September. I again remind the trial chamber that he was the head of the military police. The report is important for a number of reasons. First, because in a military sense, the person who is in command of particular forces is the one who then files a report at the end to explain himself and what his forces had done under his command. It was General Laušić who filed the report about what the military police had accomplished in the 6 weeks from the beginning of Operation Storm until the 16th of September. This is a strong indication, Your Honor, that the prosecution's theory, as raised yesterday, that General Gotovina was in command of the military police, is simply false. In addition, this document from Mr. Laušić shows what the Croatian military police had done. And it says, the military crime police, in collaboration with the RH-MUP crime police, processed 321 crimes, 13 murders. Then beneath this 18 cases of HV members dying accidentally, there are 191 cases of torching, 13 cases of setting explosives, and 86 cases of looting, theft. Of known perpetrators of the above crimes, 79 members were HV members and 274 were civilians. On the 2nd of October, the Minister of the Interior, Minister Jarnjak, filed a report with the state prosecutor in Croatia, advising the state prosecutor of what had been accomplished thus far. This will be tendered into evidence for the trial chamber as well. On the 2nd of October, you can see a breakdown from police administrations from the period of 22 August to 2 October of murders, burnings and mines, and removal of property, which is essentially theft. You can see in Zadar Knin, 28 murders were being investigated, 162 cases of arson, 3 of setting explosives, and 132 of theft. Šibenik, you see statistics for Šibenik as well, and then beneath that, an overview of the number of on-site investigations and perpetrator profile. And again, in the Zadar Knin police administration, 192 conducted on-site investigations, known perpetrators sorry, we translated this last night, so I will just tell the trial chamber. Zadar Knin, 28 HV members, 194 civilians, and 1 person wearing a military uniform but who was in fact a civilian, and 15 unknown perpetrators. These are statistics which, again, we will not say that this meant that all crime was processed in the area, but it shows an intent by the institutions of the Republic of Croatia to process crime, and moreover, from the perspective of our client, there was no reason for him to suddenly come back to Croatia and impose himself in some form of what can only be described as a coup d'etat to take over control from the legitimate civilian government. The civilian government, civilian institutions had primary responsibility to secure this area, to conduct investigations regardless of whether the perpetrator was military or civilian, to refer the matter after an investigation had been completed to the relevant prosecutors, state prosecutor or military prosecutor, and then have the courts process the matter. I again remind the court that at no point in time did anyone come to General Gotovina and say, the system is not working, we cannot cope, you need to do something. It didn't happen. Why didn't that happen? Because through the time period of the statistics as you've seen them and the dates of these documents, General Gotovina is in Bosnia conducting an operation known as Operation Maestral, and in early October is Bosnia conducting Operation Southern Movement, Southern Sweep. It was understood that General Gotovina cannot have too much on his plate. He was conducting offensive operations in a foreign country, and these matters were left to other responsible institutions. Your Honors, we submit again in conclusion, General Gotovina was a man who found himself in a circumstance in the late July of 1995 where the Bosnian Serbs were pursuing their endgame. This was not introduced to you this morning for purposes of defending or giving evidence about the legitimacy of Operation Storm. This evidence is instead relevant to the state of mind as well as the obligations of General Gotovina throughout the indictment period. You must be aware of what the Bosnian Serbs were doing in Bosnia in July of 1995, because General Gotovina was the one primarily tasked with stopping what was happening in Bosnia in July of 1995 and onwards. You must understand the context that General Gotovina, as Mr. General Mladic said in the video, which we showed you. General Mladic said, when asked, are the Croatian forces now spread too thin? He said, I'm not going to answer your question, but wait and see. Who he was talking about was General Gotovina and his forces. General Gotovina throughout this time period is dealing with matters related to Bosnia, and as I said, Operation Storm for him was a left turn to complete that operation and then come back, consolidate his forces, and continue on against Mr. Mladic. We respectfully submit, Your Honors, that at the conclusion of the prosecution's evidence, you will find that General Gotovina conducted himself at all times in accordance with the laws of war, conducted hostilities at all times in accordance with the laws of war, that there is no evidence of any excessive shelling of Knin. In fact, the evidence is overwhelmingly to the contrary, that General Gotovina issued repeated orders to his subordinates for the respect of the law or the rule of law and discipline. You have seen the video of how energetic he was in insisting upon that, and we believe it is unfair to call that boilerplate orders. Your Honors, we submit to you that at the conclusion of the process...
Mr. Misitic, I thought that my body language, looking at the clock 3 or 4 times, would be sufficient for you. Then I started getting all my stuff together, but...
Okay, last sentence.
Yes, 30 seconds.
Not even. We submit to you, Your Honors, at the conclusion of the prosecution's case, you will find that there is no evidence, and you will dismiss this case pursuant to Rule 98. Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you, Mr. Misitic. This concludes then the opening statements to the extent the parties wished to make an opening statement. Tomorrow morning we'll start hearing the evidence. Mr. Tiga, I take it that the witness scheduled for tomorrow is available. It might well be that in view of a pending motion that would start tomorrow in private or closed session to further deal with this pending motion and then hear the evidence of witness 136. We adjourn until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, same courtroom.
All rise. Favor the day.